I'm so excited to have the mayor of Anchorage, the first female elected mayor of Anchorage, Mayor LaFrance. Welcome to the show. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me, Camille.
You're very welcome. I really appreciate it. We're going to get into a really cool conversation today. But first, what's up with Portugal the Man? Why do you love that band? Why do you love that song?
It's a great song. It's a great band. And you can't beat locally grown music.
Oh, that's a great line. I'll steal that one. So first of all, I want to say congratulations.
Thank you.
For becoming our first elected female mayor. It's a big deal, and I just think it's really wonderful. And I also want to acknowledge what you have done. You're just coming up to your first year. And for as many things as people wish you have done or are doing, I want to acknowledge what you have done. Because until you're in it, you really don't know, right, what something is. It's
so
easy
true.
to look outside and point fingers and all of that. And then the other thing I do want to say is, thank you for being seen. Like you were at Pride. Were you the co-marshal at Pride or the marshal or?
No, we had a group of us from the municipality with the assembly and members of staff, and we all marched in the parade together, and it was super fun.
Yeah, and it's wonderful. And I've seen you out and about, and it just feels like you're going not just where they say you have to go, but really where you want to go. And that's really indicative of who you are. The other thing I need to say to set this up is, so I met the mayor last year in the fall. I was the MC auctioneer for Hope Community at their gala, and you were their special guest. And I had never met you before, and so I got to introduce you and then stood to the side and listened to you speak. And like a minute into your speech, I'm like, oh my gosh, she's already in the new Design for Living. I don't know if she knows it, but she's already there because you were talking about unity consciousness. You were talking about inclusivity, a community that works for all people, right? Mm-hmm. And so afterwards, of course, I found out that you also listened to my other show, the Camille Conte show, and you're a big fan. So that kind of sealed the deal. And
big
lastly,
fan.
Yeah, thank you. I want to acknowledge Marie and Emily, who are here from your office, because they were the ones who were the gatekeepers, and they took a lot of phone calls. They took a lot of emails. They listened really comprehensively to what I wanted to make sure you understood about this interview and this conversation. So, thank you both for that. So how has it been this first year for you?
It's been great. Honestly, it's such an honor to be mayor of this community. It truly is. And I really take seriously that I am elected to serve everyone. And, we've got some challenges for sure, but we have so many opportunities and such incredible people here. So really, this has been the best job I've ever had.
That's beautiful, because you were also on the assembly. And
yes.
You served as chair, for 2 years, I think?
Yes.
So you got a real look at that infrastructure as well.
Yeah.
And today, if you're listening today, we're not tackling any particular specific issues in our community. We're here to climb the tree of perspective, look down at the infrastructure of local government, and begin what I hope is, multiple conversations about reimagining, if we could redesign local government and even the role of a mayor, what might that begin, to look at? So also, I guess I also want to start with what's been good, like what within the role and what within the infrastructure of your job has been good and you see working well.
Well, first off, it's such a team effort. And there's the team at City Hall and the people who were willing to join the team and bring those same values. And at the heart of it, really, truly care about our community. Mm-hmm. We've had folks, too, who have a lot of municipal experience. I think now we have four former municipal attorneys who serve at the municipality, for example, who have come back. And so it really starts with the team, and everybody is very committed to uplifting our community and doing the work and problem solving. When we talk about team, too, we've got external partners, and so many community members and members of organizations, both like nonprofits, business sector, who want to be a part of positive change. And so that's been really, really inspiring and energizing and really great about our community.
And any of those groups or people that you feel might be good to have on the show, I'd love to have their names.
Oh, got a long list.
Yeah, well, great, because this show is really, as you know, it's not just about reimagining, but also contacting and talking to people who are also in it already, who have or are currently reimagining or are solution-based in their forward thinking that might be different from what we're used to. So it's good to hear. It's good to hear that. What about? And it's also very good to have people come back versus leave. So hats off to you about that. What about the actual role? What is it that maybe surprised you about being a mayor that delights you or you feel is a real avenue for the opportunity to have that positive impact in this community?
Well, definitely there's a lot of listening and going and, hearing from people and, about ideas, about things that aren't going well. And it's such a big, diverse community in so many ways. I mean, just where we stretch to the north there, right up to Reflection Lake, after the bridge, and then all the way south past Girdwood, past the Portage Road to Ingram Creek. And so geographically, it's diverse, a lot of miles to cover, but then also so many communities within our community. And to really take time and spend time with people and to understand, what the challenges are, understand their hopes and dreams for our community, and find that place, too, where we can help, whether that's bringing others together, to convene, or directing resources in a way that hasn't been done before.
If I remember the last time I checked, the Anchorage has like over 80 languages, 80 different languages.
Yeah, over 100. I want to say like 110 or something.
And
over
that,
100.
I mean, that level of diversity is really unique. And so when people say, what is she doing? I think, in the new design model, listening is a high value. Right?
Yeah.
It's not just always about action.
Right.
The whole point of listening is to have purposeful action based upon what you're hearing. So your willingness to go around to these various communities and these different cultures and listen, because their needs, people's needs in Mountain View and Fairview may be different from South Anchorage or downtown, right?
Yeah.
So the diversity and your skill for deep listening is critical and definitely high value in the new design model, because in the old design model, we really listen from the perspective of ready to, answer or jump in and interrupt. But really listening to somebody is very important.
Yeah, no, I think it's critical. I had a boss who would always say, 2 ears, 1 mouth, twice as much listening as talking. And I think, you talk about different structures and infrastructures, and a lot of times when we think of leaders, we think of someone who talks a lot, right? But if you're talking, it's really hard to get information from people and, to understand what it is that you need to problem solve for. And so I think about that piece a lot, because sometimes, there is a lot of listening, and you're like, okay, we got to make sure we convert this to action.
Sure.
But it's certainly really critical, and especially with a community that has so many different people with so many backgrounds and views and perspectives and needs.
Do you feel that the role of a mayor is primarily that, to make themselves available for gathering that feedback and that information and then giving it to the team, so to speak?
I think that's a huge part of it. I mean, we came in with some very clear goals and areas, too, where we need action. But certainly being available to people and connecting is a huge job of being mayor.
What might be some things that you've encountered in your first year in the role that if you could redesign the role of mayor, you might do?
Wow, that's a good question. Some things in the first year. I mean, ultimately, we need to be centered on people. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to, right? I mean, we're a community, and local government, it gets in you, right? Like, I got onto the assembly, and it was kind of a fast thing, and didn't know what it would entail and the kinds of work that it was. And after a while, you really see, like I came in, I was a little bit mistrustful of aspects of government. And it's like, oh, we are the government, the people, and what we value and what we do. And I think because of that, local government, it can really get in you. It's where the rubber meets the road.
Sure.
It's where we can really change our neighborhoods, our day-to-day in an impactful way. And so, keeping that focus on individuals in our community and designing around those needs, and does it serve the people who live here, I think needs to be at the forefront. Like there's that line about Anchorage is a great city, or that Anchorage's design is great if you're a car. But that people-centric, approach to like, who does this serve? What problem does this solve?
Exactly. And that's like a key question inside the new design model. It's not me, mine, it's us, right? So you're designing a city and you think about all the citizens. You think about those who might be in wheelchairs. You think about those who are on bicycles. You go out from yourself to take in the entire population, and then you design something with everybody in mind. But in our community, now we're putting in sidewalks, which is great, where there weren't any because of this very reason. It was too myopic in its initial imagination of what the city should be like. If you're just tuning in, we're talking to Mayor LaFrance today. I mean, from the very beginning, I kind of just went into that whole French thing. I was just like, oh, Mayor LaFrance, on my own time, in my own way.
I don't mind it.
And I'm just like, and they're like, oh, no, you're not saying it right. I go, but it sounds so great, Mayor LaFrance. So if I go there every once in a while, my apologies.
I like it.
I just wanted to put that out there for you. So, okay. So again, here's another way to have that question. You go home at night in your first year and you're like, gosh, I just wish I had more time for what?
More time for, I guess, really digging in to some of the issues. And that's what the team is for, too, right? I mean, I have all these incredible people who really dig in and do the work. And, if you could, you would just keep going around the clock, right?
Okay.
And figure out, whether it's with homelessness or, some of these housing projects we want to do.
Right.
I guess ultimately, I wish we had more time.
And you see the new design for local government from the perspective of inclusivity. How might the citizen, because as I was saying to you all earlier, in the new design model, there's a new design for the citizen. It's not just, I'm going to vote for you and why are you getting it done, or thanks for getting it done. It's a flattened model. It's not a hierarchy. It's a flattened model where everybody has a chance to be empowered to make change, and so that's why this discussion today is very general, though the opportunity to be more specific and to see exactly how that could happen. I mean, obviously we have community councils, right? And people go to the meeting and they have the experience of being able to speak and ideally be heard. However, what happens after that, I think, is where the new design model could pick up. How can we empower people in a way that not only has checks and balances, and there's a connection between us and the city government, but takes on some of those tasks and runs with it through a process of approval and all that. So if you could redesign the role of the citizen in this more ideal local government template, what would you like to see? Or what have you heard from people that you would create to help us feel more involved and empowered?
Well, I think first off, there's a lot of information out there like about our local government and it's technical and you can wade through it. And I think that, folks understanding like how it functions and how it works, just even like how we finance it is one thing. Because I don't think that a lot of people realize just how accessible it is. I know it doesn't feel accessible. There's all this information. But at the end of the day, if you have an idea, you can go to your assembly person. I know, when I was on the assembly, the best ideas a lot of time came from members of the public, or you work with your community council meeting or community council folks and road boards, or even recently we saw folks who lived in Mountain View around Davis Park really advocated. We need this space cleared. We don't have access to our public spaces. Our kids can't play here, and so that really was driven from the community. We just put up a couple murals on the Nordstrom building, Rhonda Scott paintings, and that was totally driven from the community. There were community members at a Rotary meeting who were like, hey, can we do this? We want to beautify. And that led to involvement from, the administration and the ACDA to these murals being installed.
And thank you for that, because in the new design model, art is revered. Well, art is an incredibly important aspect everywhere and in everything, in our schools, in our communities. The act of creation, the act of creativity is an important expression. And I think when we think of local government and we think of ways to create an infrastructure that allows people's creativity to flow more easily versus feel like you get so far and then you're stopped because the infrastructure doesn't allow you personally to take it to the next step is really important. So thank you for your respect and your appreciation for the arts, because the artist is always important, but right now particularly, art is very, very important. It holds up the mirror to what's happening locally as well as nationally, but it also helps us beautify, which is very important for the heart and the soul during, tough times like we're in right now.
And we have so much talent here.
We do. It's remarkable.
We have started an initiative we call Beyond the Beige.
Okay.
To add more color and more art.
Beyond the beige.
Well, because that's the thing, right? Anchorage is beige.
Okay. I never heard that. But all right, I get it.
Intended to be playful.
For sure.
And I think there's so much that we could work with, being this subarctic community with this tremendously rich indigenous heritage, and we're this hub, people from all over the world come here. And, who we are and how we express that part of ourselves through the art around us. This is really exciting.
Is there something, again, we're using this radical imagination because I think the hardest thing these days is we're looking at what's happening, whether it's locally or nationally or globally, and it's very quick how we can feel depressed that not only what's happening, but that we don't necessarily have a tangible effect on it, right? And so when you look at just the arts as a means to engage people in local government, is there something that's coming up for you now that might be something you would consider putting into the infrastructure of local government to tie art into engagement?
I think that's an exciting idea that we're going to need to pursue more. There is an arts commission that advises the administration and the assembly.
Right.
And I know we're looking at ways where, we can really, turn to that group of very talented people who are volunteering their time and, do some of that or step up that engagement. So, but that's something that we're going to need to tackle or discuss more.
Yeah, and that's what I say to people. The new design for living is really an experience of being in the question. It's always delightful when there is an answer or there is a solution that emerges, but mostly we're willing to live inside questions. Because for me, I know that the longer I live inside questions and the longer we as a group are comfortable in questions, the more we create what I would say is a field where those answers and those various solutions can emerge. So again, it's different to maybe have you be on a radio show where someone isn't, well, what's your answer and what's your solution and how are you going to? Because today I just really wanted the chance to give you the chance to just, again, reimagine. Like, I'm in this job for a year. These things I love, but if I had the chance to redesign, I would change this.
Yeah.
So just continue to talk more about what you might change, either within the role or within the infrastructure of local government.
Mm-hmm. Well, you had mentioned the situation at the national level, and there's uncertainty at the state level, too, as well. And so, to me, it comes back to very clearly that the local is where it's at.
For sure.
I mean, this is where we can work together and create that commonality and make progress. And so I guess that's not so much an infrastructure change, perhaps, as part of that. Okay, I'm taking to heart what you said, Camille, about like being comfortable in the question.
Yeah.
And so as far as that question, I'm not sure what that would be to better, help people be empowered to feel like, this is my community and I have this idea. We've seen that in the past where there was, a housing club group and they worked on ideas for housing that they brought forward that have resulted in code changes. People who wanted to advocate for childcare and pre-K brought forward, and I got to work with them, the proposal that the voters approved to use the cannabis tax revenues for pre-K and childcare.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so there are a lot of community-led initiatives, and I think sometimes in that larger space of grievances and negativity, it's like, okay, we all need to make an effort here to find positive things. I think it starts with, one, don't be a jerk. That was like a friend of mine from college was like, okay, this is the first law. Look at the ways where you can be positive and helpful. And so embracing the question piece of, okay, how do we do that? I always wanted to have like a tailgate party before an assembly meeting.
Oh my gosh.
But things got too crazy. I mean, maybe, a family friendly one.
Oh my
whatever.
gosh. What a great idea. This is what I'm saying. So thank you for saying that.
Okay.
Expand upon
that. It wasn't
that.
quite the right moment.
What would that be like?
I mean, it would be like eating and hanging out and chatting and like, talking about our kids, our dogs, our fishing spots, and, what hike did you do or what's your favorite restaurant?
Community.
Right. Because, when we start talking about things in concrete terms, I mean, it really breaks down barriers, right? I think that's one of the problems with at the national level. A lot of stuff is abstract and people, organize around certain principles. But like in the day-to-day here, I mean, a good example is when there's a land use issue.
Okay.
I mean, nothing unites people like a land use issue, whether it's at a community council or the line out the door at the assembly chambers, because people feel so strongly, as they should, about their neighborhoods and where they live. And I think we need more of the tangible and the concrete and the human, because then we can work together.
I got inspired with this idea quite a while ago now, and it hasn't manifested yet, but maybe it will. I was inspired to create community gatherings because I just felt like, you know what? There's a lot going on. Things are changing every single day. We're overwhelmed. And the idea of coming into some room with some basic agreements for civility, where you and others could be there to, again, listen. I feel strongly about that, and that's kind of what you're saying, is to create some connective tissue here, so to speak, so that, what would it be like if we had a monthly community gathering at one of the rec centers, with no other purpose, because it's a worthwhile purpose to gather, to see each other. to get more comfortable in the discomfort of listening to someone who thinks differently than you, but you've agreed that you're going to stretch your own version of yourself to just make it okay that they do think different than you versus trying to defend and explain your position. Like that's really important in the new design for living.
Okay.
Is this realization that everybody has different thoughts about things.
Yeah.
And we've become a right and wrong society. You know, and what works for some person may, as we have just talked about, the we versus the I.
Right.
Somebody's all fired up about something that might work for them, but how might it impact this person? And how are we willing to mitigate or change something so that maybe there's less of it, but more people can be included in the answer? So again, if you, your team, anybody in your staff want to follow up on this idea, I think people would respond to it in a big, big way. I think connection, because the new design for living is all about local. This is why I'm here. This is a volunteer show. I don't get paid for this. But I'm so committed to helping this particular city in which I live to strengthen their community ties with each other, to do and facilitate tough conversations that keep us divided and separate. I mean, some consciousnesses we're not going to change.
Sure.
You know, they're entrenched in duality. They're entrenched in separation. You're my enemy. The fence is up. Go away. Cool. But there are a lot of us that are willing to think differently and to live in these questions that I talk about with you. And it's just exciting to hear you say tailgate, because really inside that idea is community and the importance of community. Because because what are they saying now? Communities that are rooted in joy, communities that have each other's back, neighborhoods that kind of have action plans, whether it's for ICE or whatever it is that might be going on, are stronger to infiltrate. They're harder to affect negatively. And so that's why I really appreciate you being here today, because I wanted to give people a chance to hear a version of you maybe that we don't always get a chance to hear, because you're busy and, you know, it's snippets, right? Mayor LaFrance is my guest today. We're reimagining local government. It's the first of maybe many conversations. And we're also talking about, in the time that we have left, is how would we reimagine the role of mayor? What else do you have in your notes or on your heart that gets into some of this that we're talking about today?
Well, you know, I think that our community has been through a lot of disruption in the last few years, and some of those connections. Well, you know, we went through the pandemic and lifestyles changed too, right? And we see that playing out in the numbers around volunteerism and participation, in different organizations. And so that connective tissue, you know, you mentioned, Camille, is something that we need to give attention to.
Right.
And you know, reconnect. I think of, I got to serve with John Weddleton on the assembly, and a lot of times people would be like, you know, would come forward with some frustrations about others in the neighborhood around, you know, whether it was an animal or just something that, you know, wasn't really, you know, it was kind of disruptive. And he would often say, have you had a block party? Do you know your neighbors? Can you talk to them?
Yes.
And, you know, a lot of us don't know our neighbors well enough, right, to be able to go talk with them. And so this idea of, again, getting together and spending that time with each other.
And you don't need the mayor's permission to have a block party. You know, if you're hearing this and you're like, yeah, I've been kind of called to do that, or yeah, I would be the one that might do that, go do it. You know, that's the beauty of the new design for living. You don't necessarily need permission to create unity, to create, you know, oneness, to bring people together.
Right. And, you know, and we're always moving forward. I don't want to invoke any kind of nostalgia, but I think the reality is there's a lot like of retro designing too when we talk about like just, you know, whether we're talking about walkability. Okay. Right? Like people who are older and younger want the same things.
Okay.
They want walkable neighborhoods that have like basic city services or grocery stores, you know, in a little central area. And I think, too, when we talk about community and the ways in which, you know, I grew up in Palmer and it was very small. And so some of the, whether it was the church potlucks or what, there were regular times where we got together and, bringing that, some of those aspects, the best aspects of what we think of with small communities,
exactly.
That we have here, but also moving forward too, recognizing that there are limitations with some of those models as well. But when we interact, just making sure that, because we're all busy and we go about our time, and then, at the end of the week or whatever, maybe folks don't have time or energy to do things. And so embedding some of that, into our lives,
right,
I think is important too.
Well, because you're a mom with kids.
Yeah.
You're also, you have a husband. So you too have a life, that I'm sure has experienced quite a bit of sacrifice because of the role that you're in. But it's really great to hear you remind all of us the importance of local, and that the small steps and the small groups are ultimately where the real power lies. Not just in our experience of each other, but in problem solving, right?
Love the small groups.
What about being a female in politics? I was, as our first female elected mayor, hopefully not our last. Anything you want to say about how you would redesign the roles of women in politics?
Yeah. That's an area I've definitely done some reflecting on, and I'm really glad to be middle-aged in the role, because I think, I know for me, if I had been younger,
okay,
it would have been harder. As you get older, you get more comfortable too about things and recognize there always are a lot of comments around, you get feedback around appearance,
right,
and everything.
Oh my
I'm
gosh.
told that male politicians as well get that. But I think really, a lot of times you hear from the public, we want normal, regular people to serve. I think it's really hard for normal, regular people to serve. Not just for the hours and pay, but you do have to have a thick skin, and, you do have to become comfortable with some things in order to be available, or whether it's doing forums. And so I don't know how you would necessarily institutionalize it, but I think, being more, if we really do want regular people to serve, we need to be supportive of regular people serving as well. And I'm trying to be comfortable in the question and just talking through what that, Camille, what you said.
Absolutely.
Because I don't know specifically.
No.
And I'm just going to believe in progress.
Absolutely.
And
conversations.
That,
because here's the thing. I don't necessarily feel personally that what isn't working is going to give me the answer to what could work. I don't look there for it. I don't think it's the responsibility of what doesn't work, nor would I want what's not working to tell me what could work. I hope that makes a little bit of sense. In other words, the system is not so much about getting institutionalizing women in what is. My interest is, what would it look like if those people had to cross over and come into something we institutionalize in a new template, where it's more balanced. I was talking to you earlier about the difference between the male brain and the female brain, and how in the new design for leadership, both are needed. Because women, and whether you want to connect this to the idea of hunter and gatherer, but women have the capacity in their brains to better understand how a decision would land in the whole, in the group, right? Whereas the male brain is more designed to execute that decision, because that's how the male brain works. This is also why women are leaving the workforce in droves, because the workforce is designed after the male brain, and there's no female brain template in it, and we're exhausted. We don't necessarily run that way. It's very, very interesting, female neuroscience, and how our brain is very different from the male brain. Not less, just different. And how in the new design model, there would be more of a balance. And this whole thing about, dress and having a tough skin, that doesn't live in the new design model. because that we've outgrown that. We don't choose that. You know what I'm saying? You know, in the scaffolding of the new design model that is built on oneness, inclusivity, mutual respect, those things don't even exist. So as great as it is to make an effort to change what is, I'm also about creating a bridge out of that or creating something that can run alongside it, right? And use it as a reference point to what do we want more of, what do we want less of, what don't we want at all, and what could we build, you know, in its place. So hats off to you for enduring what I'm sure can be tough moments, you know, about how you look, what you're supposed to look like. There was some woman on Instagram. It was great. She was opening up a bottle of wine. I won't use the profanity she used, but it was important words. But she's like, you know, you ever see these videos that tell women over 50 how they're supposed to look, how they're supposed to wear their hair? Who are you? You know, she goes, do you ever see that for men? Are there Instagram videos where this is what a man's hair should look like over 50, or this is how they should dress? You know, to a great degree, it's really true that we still have that kind of scrutiny, you know, and we all know why. Go ahead. Any final thoughts?
Well, just when it comes to representative democracy, and ensuring that our elected officials really do represent the community. I mean, generally speaking, we've got work to do there.
Yeah.
And, you know, and how to do that, I don't have complete answers, certainly different ideas and thoughts. And I know part of it is to get comfortable with the idea that, you know, we've got like a citizen legislature and that everybody should think of themselves as potentially serving in that way. I love it when young people come to the mayor's office and they sit in the chair at the desk and it's like, okay, imagine yourself as mayor. Imagine yourself on the assembly or,
there you go.
You know, in whatever role, because, you know, that's how our democracy works. And I think it works best when we do have that broader representation and different ideas that come from all these different experiences and backgrounds and ways of understanding problems and ways of understanding solutions.
Absolutely beautiful. Yeah, that's really great. Thank you for being here today. I know you have a 1:00 appointment, so I want to honor the time. When we started, they were like, well, aren't you going to take any breaks? I said, no, it's going to go by really fast. And here we are at the end. So if you need help with the tailgate party, or if you want to talk more about these community gatherings and how might we do them, I'm absolutely open for that.
Wonderful.
Let's talk about your closing song, because I asked Emily, I said, hey, I need 2 songs, one to open the show, one to close the show. So we had Portugal the Man. I was shocked. I did the little emoji with the head blowing off. That our closing song today is Thunderstruck from AC/DC. So you're a rocker, so that's great. Why this song? What do you love? What is it about this song?
Well, you know, I mentioned I grew up in the Valley, and I will confess that on the school bus, I heard a lot of AC/DC, a lot of Ozzy, a lot of Black Sabbath, all of that kind of stuff.
Did you have a leather jacket?
No, I didn't. I was a nerdy kid.
Oh, okay.
But still
But you were being groomed on the bus.
But still exposed to the music. But my husband plays the guitar, and he's, you know, taken up like Chet Atkins songs and songs, Fleetwood Mac, and then also like AC/DC.
Yeah.
And as he's played these songs, I've really, too, come to understand the skill and the beauty in them. And AC/DC, I mean, Thunderstruck.
Yeah.
Who doesn't love that song, right?
Well, we're about to find out. Mayor, thank you so much for being on the show today. As I say, you're welcome back anytime. It's been such a joy. Mayor LaFrance, my special guest. Thank you so much. Oh, my gosh. How cool is that? One of our mayor's most favorite songs from AC/DC. I mean, say what you will. She's cool. She's a rocker. Thank you to Mayor LaFrance for being on the show today. That was such a thrill for me. I'm going to open the phone lines now. If you have any comments or anything you want to offer or questions, 907-222-1061 is the phone number. But I really just wanted the opportunity just to talk with her, make her as comfortable as possible in what is really a cutting edge conversation. I said to her, I said, this is going to be the most interesting conversation you could have today, because really her willingness to come on the show, knowing that we were going to talk about the new design for local government and, what would you do if you could reimagine your job as mayor, and what might you begin to consider rearranging or reimagining within the infrastructure of local government is a big deal. And so thank you so much that the mayor came on the show today. I hope you had a chance to catch it. If you didn't, it is being recorded, and I'll definitely share that with you. What might you be thinking about when you think about ways to reimagine our local government? What might be ways that you would like to see a mayor's role reimagined to be more inclusive? I actually thought it was really great that that's my personal phone that is ringing right now. I actually thought it was really great that she talked about a citizens' legislature. Like when she said that phrase, like my whole body just lit up, because that is a phrase that I'm going to take with me into my talk about redesigning and reimagining local government is, how do we better engage ourselves? Yeah, we've got the community council, but again, oftentimes our experience is we're heard ideally, but then decisions are made in silos. And so part of the new design for living and changing the infrastructure would be to kind of break down traditional government silos that don't work anymore and to create new infrastructure that very well could. And so I just found, and then when she talked about having a tailgate party before an assembly meeting, I mean, honestly, that's really great. That's cutting edge. That's living on the edge of ideas that can engage us, not just with the mayor and her team, but with each other. Just think about this. You're having a family-friendly tailgate party. Maybe there's hot dogs or some food. Maybe it's a potluck. People are talking with each other. You're in the frequency of connection and community. And then you go into an assembly meeting carrying that vibration, carrying that feeling of connection and oneness, because honestly, where we have the opportunity to go, and a lot of us are already there, and a lot of us are coming over every single day, is a world that works for everyone, is a world that works for more people than the world is working for now. And I so appreciated that she got that local is where it's at. And I'm telling you, she's got the kind of consciousness that is very much aligned with the new design for living. And I'm very hopeful that the mayor will come back on the show and maybe talk more specifically about some of the issues that we are dealing with and continue this discussion, throw open the phone lines and get your involvement with her. The other thing she said, which I thought was really fabulous, she talked about that she thought the main role of her job as a mayor was to listen. Like in the old design model, that is very dismissed because it's more female brain to listen. And because the old design model values action, solutions, right? It doesn't see listening as important. And that's why the new design for leadership is both the male and the female brain. It's very important to have those two different brains, two different ways of seeing the same thing so that they can influence and interact with each other. I know the mayor has a lot of female employees on her team to balance out what can often be a heavily male populated sector of the community. But everybody is needed. Both are needed. We are all needed in the new design model for local government. So those were some things that really, stood out for me, is that she spends a lot of time listening. Like when I was going through my spiritual awakening and I was involved in a lot of spiritual activity and books and workshops and classes and all of that, I got hooked up with a community and an organization, and they introduced this flattened model where you take a hierarchy and you flatten it. Well, there's nobody at the top, And it is still, for me, a very worthwhile template. Maybe I'll put that in my notes and bring that back to you so we can discuss it more fully. It's not to say there aren't leaders. There are. But the empowered leadership model in a flattened model of leadership is far more encompassing, and it's far reaching into the community because, like she said, and that's a great question we didn't have time for, but it's one to consider and ask ourselves. How do we create local government that can include the working mom, the working dad, the single person who's working, whatever it is we're all doing with our days that keep us busy for most of the day until, 5:00 comes. So we've got after hours, maybe a lunch hour, and then the weekends where we all try to catch up with each other and with our errands. How do you build a new design model for local government that makes it easier for us to influence and affect local government and the outcomes and the solutions that we're all looking for in our own community? So just a really wonderful exchange with the mayor today. I just was so thrilled when she said yes to coming on the show, because again, I would imagine if you're an elected official, a lot of times we want answers, right? We have a short amount of time with the mayor or with our elected officials. We're trying to find many of them right now, right? To get some answers. Give me some answers. And that's totally appropriate and it's natural. However, it's equally important to have the kind of conversation I had with her in which we're not necessarily talking about the specifics of our community, but rather the infrastructure that could be enhanced, rebuilt, reimagined, because by doing that, those answers, those solutions, the way in which we arrive at solutions can be experienced. Because in the new design model, you change your mind. In the new design model, you do your best to have conversations like I just had with our mayor, to live in the question for as long as necessary, to use radical reimagination as a tool to say, okay, this isn't quite working. If we could radically reimagine local government, if we had permission because it could work, how would we do that? What would we do? And I just find it absolutely fantastic that the mayor was willing to come on the show and live in the question with me. I knew we weren't going to have a lot of answers. I just kind of wanted to massage her brain a little bit. I wanted to, let her leave here thinking, that it's percolating in her head, because I said, you need help with that tailgate party, or you want to talk more about this community gathering idea where we come together regularly, civilly to discuss, but mostly to listen, as she said, to listen without feeling threatened, without feeling like if someone has their way, it's going to exclude my way. That's kind of how it is now. But in the new design model, what we do is we find the common ground. You don't have to give up how you think. I don't have to give up how I think. However, what we are agreeing to is thinking in a way that includes the whole, that includes all, because we live in a belief where we absolutely accept, because it is scientifically proven, the interconnectivity of all life. In the new design model, especially in the new design model of government, where decisions and legislation are being made for the people, we would have an assembly that is committed to action steps that bring the highest and best for the most amount of people. It may not be possible for every single person, but we go about it with that in mind and in heart, versus people have their own ideologies, their own belief systems, and I'm just going to represent and I'll give you a perfect example. Senator Murkowski, right? It came out over the weekend that she was trying to make a backdoor deal with Senate Republicans, that if you take Alaska out of this big bill, if you take some of these provisions and exclude Alaska from them, I will vote for the bill. Now, for a lot of people, That's great. Thanks for looking out for just us. However, in the new design model, it's not great because she knows that voting for that bill with provisions exempt from her state is going to be catastrophic for people in another state. So in the new design model, you're not making backdoor deals. There is no back door. There is no back room to make deals in. There's only one room, and we're all in it. In the new design for living, you don't make a deal just for your state, knowing that if a bill passes, it's going to cripple other states. That's not how you do it, But that's how the old design model goes. And I'm sure there's a lot of Alaskans that are rooting for her to do whatever she has to do for us, even if it would cause a problem for other people. Well, that's not how we think in the new design model. In the new design model, we say, you know what? As much as we would like to do that, we can't. We can't do that because we know. We know that this bill doesn't work for anybody except the few, the rich. So it's a very powerful time to be in conversation. Thank you so much for listening to the show. Have a super great Monday, and I will see you next week.